I've been tracking Damian McCarthy since Oddity. That film is one of my favorite horrors in the last few years. A director who understands that the scariest thing a film can do is trust the audience. Let their imagination do the work. So when Hokum dropped, bigger budget, bigger cast, Adam Scott in rural Ireland, a sealed honeymoon suite with a 400-year-old witch trapped inside, I was fully in. And the second half of this film is everything I hoped for. It's properly scary. It's McCarthy doing what McCarthy does. The first half, though, nearly killed it before it got there. Adam Scott plays Owen Bauman, a famous horror novelist, very Stephen King coded, who at the start of the film is struggling to finish the final book in his trilogy. He decides to travel to a remote hotel in rural Ireland, the Bilberry Woods, where his parents honeymoon to scatter their ashes. And then he meets the staff, and the staff tell him about the honeymoon suite, a room that's been locked off for years, supposedly because the owner trapped a witch inside it decades ago, and the witch never left. That's the film. A grieving, difficult man, a haunted room, a piece of Irish folklore with teeth, and the question of whether what he experiences over the course of his stay is real, or guilt, or something he's been carrying his whole life catching up with him. On paper, it's a perfect Damian McCarthy setup, and for about half the runtime, it absolutely is. Once Hokum properly gets going, once it stops announcing itself and starts trusting you, it's the best thing McCarthy has made. The sense of dread in that second half is real. The Bilberry Woods Hotel is exactly the kind of setting that stays with you, creepy and specific in a way that generic horror locations never manage. The POV camera work throughout is excellent, and you can feel McCarthy's control of space in every frame. And the honeymoon suite sequence is the kind of horror filmmaking you remember. McCarthy lets the film breathe, lets silence do things that jump scares physically cannot. There is a moment in that suite, I won't say what, where I was genuinely not ready for what was on screen. The specific feeling of your body catching up with your eyes slightly too late, like genuinely rare. Most horror directors spend their whole careers chasing it and never get there. McCarthy gets there. The folklore architecture is strong too, the mythology around the witch, the specific rules of the suite, the way the hotel's history gets revealed. It's doing what Oddity did, building a world with its own eternal logic that you have to inhabit rather than just observe. When Hokum is operating in that register, it earns every percentage point of that 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. The first half though, the jump scares. And I want to be precise because it's not that the jump scares are inherently bad, it's that these feel like someone tapping you on the shoulder every 15 minutes going, remember, this is a horror film. A sound, a face, a sound, a face, over and over. And in a film made by a director who demonstrably knows how to build dread without any of that, it's genuinely baffling they're in there. Every time the film earns a moment of real tension and then resolves it with a cheap jolt, you have to rebuild from scratch. The first half of Hokum is constantly doing that to itself. Adam Scott, look, he's good at dry and understated. He has a specific register that works in certain roles. And there are moments in this film where it lands, but you're asking him to carry a character dealing with real, deeply rooted trauma. There are scenes where you need his face to be the thing that tells you how seriously to take what's happening, and he can't quite get there. There's a version of Owen Bauman that is genuinely haunted. What Scott gives you is a man who looks mildly concerned. It's not a disaster, but it creates a distance at the center of the film that the second half has to work hard to overcome. And the plot has gaps that cross the line from atmospheric ambiguity into the script just not having filled things in. There are character decisions, particularly around the hotel staff, where you'll spend chunks of the film confused. Not what does this mean confused, which can be horror doing its job. More like, why would anyone do that confused? And once you notice it, it doesn't go away. What's interesting about Hokum is what it says about the difficulty of scaling up. The things that made Oddity feel so singular, the constraint, the strangeness, the refusal to explain itself, are slightly softened here. Some of the Hokum decisions, the jump scares, the more conventional plot mechanics later on, an emotional arc that feels gestured at rather than fully earned, read like a film trying to meet an audience it didn't need to go looking for. McCarthy's audience is already there. Oddity found them. What Hokum needed to do was be the next Oddity, not a more accessible version of it. It's both of those things at once, which is why it can't quite be either. If you've seen Oddity, you know exactly what the gap I'm describing. I had that at 3.5, and if you haven't seen Oddity, that's your actual homework before you watch this one. You'll enjoy Hokum more in the right order, and you'll understand what McCarthy is capable of when the film isn't getting in its own way. Let me know in the comments whether the second half saved it for you, or whether the first half killed it before it could. That's genuinely the question with this one, and if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button.